Okay, welcome everyone. We are very pleased and honored today to have with us Ginny Bank, who is a expert in natural products, actually a natural products chemist, and she's been doing this for 15 years. She's really widely recognized in the industry as one of the leading professionals in this area, and teaches and lectures on this throughout the industry. So her special expertise is in antioxidants, so she's going to share her story how she achieved that. But the reason she's on the call today is that we want to enlighten you and kind of warn and inform you about some different ways that antioxidants are measured and assessed, and then we'll go into some discussion of the comparison of antioxidants. But there's a test that is commonly used in the industry that it has really been manipulated and distorted to confuse you. And Ginny is really one of the leading experts in this area to help educate you so that you won't be confused, so that you and your family can truly take control of your health. So welcome, Ginny.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great for you to be here. And I wonder if you could share with our listeners and viewers how you achieved discuss your journey through this process.
Sure. In the early 90s, I got a job as a researcher in a company that developed products for the pharmaceutical, dietary supplement, and food industries, but just natural products from plant-based material only. And I worked in the lab, and I worked on a project for a number of years where we were extracting and purifying the compounds in rosemary, a common herb that everyone knows about. And it turns out that rosemary is a natural antioxidant. It's been used from ancient times to help preserve foods, but no one ever really knew what the compounds were that were helping preserve foods. You put rosemary in things like sausage back 100 years ago, and the reason they put it in there was not just the flavor, but it actually also kept the oils from going rancid. So I did a lot of research on how antioxidants work in a food setting, in a food product, in a food matrix, and learned to purify the compounds, understood the mechanisms that were involved in the oxidation process. And eventually, when that project was over, we turned to looking at nutritional antioxidants from plant-based material. And at the time, there were numerous test methods to look at how well an antioxidant worked in a food. You actually did shelf life studies. You could put the antioxidant in oil, force the oil to go rancid, and then determine which one worked better. But for nutritionally speaking, you don't have those opportunities because antioxidants tend to be more of a long-term solution. You have to wait a few months before you might see a change in your body. So this ORAC method that was developed by the USDA started getting some leverage in the food industry, in the dietary supplement industry. I have some interesting Google statistics that in 2004, if you put in ORAC and antioxidant, you'd get less than 4,000 hits. And recently, it's over 180,000 in 2010. So everybody is using ORAC. Everybody's talking about ORAC. It's being used to the point where I think it's confusing the consumer because of various reasons, which I'll get into a little bit later. But that was my journey into antioxidants and nutritional antioxidants particularly. There's a lot of other methods which I'd like to talk about later that companies can use to determine how an antioxidant works that maybe are a little more relative to the human body. And ORAC is a really good method. It's been validated. It just needs to be used correctly. And one of the things that it's great for is for quality control. It is really important that if you are a manufacturer and you're buying raw material, that you know that the material you buy is consistent. And one of the ways to do that is ORAC. And that's great for the consumer who can be sure if you're guaranteeing an ORAC value on a product, that the product's always going to have the same antioxidant potency. It's not going to vary because a lot of natural products do vary. They vary in color, they vary in flavor, but you don't want an antioxidant to vary in antioxidant potency. So for the consumer, ORAC is a great test to guarantee quality.
That is excellent. So, can you tell us a little bit? So it's established as the barometer, as the really the sort of the more or less the gold standard of how of a tool or a resource that one can use to compare other antioxidants.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you enlighten us as to how this really wonderful tool, how it's changed over the times with respect to the USDA, and how some companies are using this changes to manipulate the information, being semi-truthful yet deceiving the consumer.
Okay, so once the USDA developed this method early on, they used a standard and a reference standard. And basically they used a reference standard that was also a natural product that had some variations. And they published a number of papers where they tested, 20 to 30 to 40 different fruits and vegetables and published the data, the ORAC values of these fruit and vegetables. And one could go in, and it was done per gram, and you could look at this data and say, okay, a gram of broccoli has this value. Well, a serving of broccoli has 148 grams. So here's the ORAC value of a serving of broccoli. And these numbers were used for a few years as sort of a tangible way for the consumer to say, okay, I need to get this much ORAC value, which is equal to, say, 9 servings of fruits and vegetables. Well, in 2001, the ORAC method was improved upon. It wasn't very reproducible. It had difficulties having things repeated within a standard deviation that was acceptable. So the USDA started using a synthetic reference standard and changed the method, and it was much more reproducible. And they published a much bigger database of all these fruits and vegetables. But the one thing that happened when they changed the standard was the values got higher. So instead of, for instance, broccoli being 200, and I don't know if these values are exactly right, but say broccoli was 250 units using the first method, now it's 600 units. This new method is being validated by an industry organization called the AOCS, which is this industry organization that provides testing methods and validates testing methods. And this is the only method that's used right now. Nobody uses the old method because the old method used this standard that wasn't very reproducible. So, but the problem is that this data that was published in the 90s for fruits and vegetables using the old method is still widely used as a comparison tool. So, in other words, you could say, I have 10,000 ORAC units in this product, but the old method, the average vegetable serving, ORAC vegetable serving was 285 units. And so you could say, look, this is 20 servings, almost 20 servings of vegetables. But that's tested, your 10,000 ORAC units are tested with a different method. So it's not even comparing apples to oranges, it's comparing apples to eggs. So you need to be looking at data that manufacturers need to be looking at data that is recent, otherwise it's not substantiated. So the average vegetable serving based on the new ORAC method is 900 units. So a serving, 10,000 ORAC units is about a little over the 10 servings of vegetables, not 20. And it's confusing because a lot of companies are doing this. It's almost become like a horse race. Like, who has the greater number of fruits and vegetables that they can claim on their label, antioxidant equivalent? And if you're using the correct method, you're comparing it to the data from the correct method, you're at a disadvantage. And so I feel like it's important that the industry as a whole come together to market this correctly. Otherwise, the use of ORAC is just going to become a marketing tool rather than a good science tool that it is.
Right. And it's not so much market it correctly, but educate the public about this. And that's really one of the areas where we excel in, is providing this information and causing it to go widespread so that most people are aware of it in the know, and we're really exposed to this. I mean, we just recently did this with agave, which had the perception, the common held perception before we started exposing it, that it was a healthy alternative to sugar. And when in fact, when you did the research, and you may recognize this as a chemist, and high fructose corn syrup is 55% free fructose. 55% free fructose, which is one of the most, what myself and many others believe, the leading cause of obesity.